Hey friends, David here. In today's increasingly challenging and divided world, the urgent need to prioritize greater good over personal preference has never, ever been more critical. Our individual choices, while they're significant, they must align with the collective well-being to address the challenges that we're facing right now, such as political differences, social inequality, and in some places, economic crisis. Embracing a perspective that values community and collaboration over self-interest, it fosters resilience, empathy, and camaraderie. By we acting with a sense of shared responsibility, we can create an environment where the thoughts of all are heard, the issues are seen, and the needs of all are met. Friends, only this will ensure a thriving future for generations to come. Now's the time to rise above our narrow interests and our personal agendas, put down the sword, and let respect and commonality be the driving force of all of our actions. Because of this, Nikki and I felt compelled to bring back this increasingly relevant and important topic that we tackled some time ago. I hope you find today's topic as important as a lot of our friends did: greater good over personal agenda. Here we go. Let's do this.
We've got one life, one shot. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? Addicted to Betterment, a podcast to inspire us to keep going, to try something new, to dream, to think big, bigger, to overcome. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. David and Nikki, ready to flow. So Addicted to Betterment is really a commitment to being our best self. We talk about thinking and living big, having goals and achieving those goals and never giving up and being courageous and living bold and living our hell yes life and our best self at the same time as living the hell yes life and achieving those big goals helps other people and chooses to serve others' needs as well as our own. And sometimes our laser focused efforts puts others on the wayside versus really what's the best thing to do at the time, and kind of take the blockers off and realize, is this about me or is this about us? And sometimes an advantage to us doesn't serve the majority of people. I know for myself, I love helping other people and I get a lot of heartfelt reward and meaning in my life by helping other people. But man, there are so many times I'm on the climb and all I'm looking out for is myself. And I forget that my choices and words and sometimes lack of compassion or the no, because it didn't feel like a hell yes that day because I didn't think it through all the way, really can negatively impact a lot of people. And so today we want to talk about serving the greater good and really breaking that down. And just David and I want to challenge ourselves, and we hope it challenges and inspires you and all of us to have more awareness and to keep this at the forefront of our mind. And really, how do we practice serving the greater good every day?
What a challenging thing to tackle, serving the greater good. And if you think of the volatility of our world right now, the state of people's minds, the state of people's hearts, life is hard right now. If you're a parent, life is hard. If you're a business owner, life is hard. Life, period, can be challenging. And sometimes we forget. I say we, let me just back up. Sometimes I forget that serving the greater good. And if we could adapt this in our world and do this well, imagine how it would change our life. And unfortunately, Nikki, I wish I got this right all the time, but sometimes I get it so wrong. So yes, it's interesting. You suggested this topic. In my work, I work very hard to be a top performer, to be a top producer, and to achieve goals. I set my goals high. My company sets the goals high for me. and I get laser focused. As a matter of fact, I often wear a bracelet and I wear it intentionally on my left wrist that says whatever it takes. Because in my mind, I want to be reminded regularly, daily. Sometimes I get tired, and sometimes the grind of trying to achieve big goals, I'm just like, yeah, I'm a little exhausted from the struggle. And so I see that to remind myself, whatever it takes to achieve that goal, whatever it takes to hit that target is what I'm going to do. And for this last year, 2022, I had a really great year, achieved some big goals and some personal accolades that I'm very proud of. And I take pride in doing those and doing those well. Well, recently it was brought to my attention that people on my team, they didn't hit their targets and they didn't hit their goals. And I work directly with them regularly. My activities influence their activities, and they are directly impacted and affected by how I do my job and how I work with them. And I came to this harsh reality, Nikki. It was harsh. It hurt that I did not do a great job of collaborating with them and always doing what was in the best interest of them. I'm laser focused on hitting my target. And I did a great job. I mean, I'm patting myself on the back right now as I'm recording this. Like, I'm really proud of what I accomplished. But when I realized that some of the things that I accomplished hurt them in a negative way and really impacted hindering them from achieving their goals, when I realized that, and I realized, dang, every choice, every decision I made was regularly self-seeking versus seeking to serve the greater good and making sure that I'm helping everyone win while I win. I used to work for someone, and I've said this privately, publicly. This one person I reported to has always been my favorite person I've ever reported to. And it's interesting because often I would get fired up. Nikki, you know, I'm a fired up person. I get passionate about things, and I would get fired up and passionate, and he would always listen. And when I would finally stop talking, and I'm like, I've made my best case, and I know that he's going to agree with me, and I know that he's going to go, okay, I'm going to go fight for you and help you get this done. I can't tell you how many times he would, once I was done talking, he would look at me and say, is this serving the greater good, or is it serving your personal preference? And Nikki, I can't tell you how many times I would tuck my tail between my legs, get off the Zoom call, and change, pivot, because I knew I was just seeking my own agenda, seeking to achieve my own goals. And what I was trying to do did not at all serve the greater good for the best of my team. So, man, unfortunately, I don't always get this right, but I'm so glad we're talking about this today, and hopefully we can help us all do this better.
Well, and I think, David, thank you, first of all, for being so vulnerable and sharing. I think that with the way that life is and how fast paced we live and all the roles that we wear when we're in the height of our career, it's so easy to overlook because you're focused on making sure you're just keeping the head above water and you're getting everything done. And it's so easy to overlook and it's not intentional. However, intention is not enough. I really like to say that I've learned it so much in stories that I've heard in my podcast, Gut Plus Science, leaders talking about, but my intention was this, but I learned my intention wasn't enough. And intention is great in a lot of ways, but if it overlooks awareness, our own awareness, like we are not aware enough that our intention really doesn't matter because we're not aware of what's really happening. Gosh, we all go through that, you know? And so, how do you build this muscle to practice greater good in your daily efforts? I think we're all in the journey. It's a complex thing and it's a lot of layers. And I wanted to look up the definition of what is greater good. And it's working for the greater good implies serving the needs of something bigger and perhaps more worthy than your own self interest.
So good.
And so, we all have our targets and our goals, and we're all juggling a whole lot. And how do we stay present in the goals that we're seeking to accomplish and who's along that journey as well, and what those goals do to lift or maybe take others down? And so, when I was jotting through some notes earlier, I thought really number one is awareness. Like, is greater good and serving the greater good part of our just awareness of who we should be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then B is the mindset that we bring towards greater good, the way we think about it, and then our own practice. And so I think just the purpose of this podcast today more than anything is awareness of how are we showing up to serve the greater good. And I think from a mindset perspective, what are those core beliefs that elevate us or help us to really be this person and walk that way?
Man, why is it that this topic challenges me as much as any topic that we've done? I feel like we're all, if you're listening to Addicted to Betterment, you're trying to be the best version of yourself. And I know internally, Nikki, we have a saying that it's either a hell yes or a hell no. And often in these decisions that you're saying, this is a hell yes, because it's often because it serves our hell yes. But is it a greater good? And I think of all the different areas of life that this shows up. I gave a personal example of a work situation in which I took responsibility and I met with the people that it affected directly. And I looked them in the eye and said, look, I take ownership of this. I take full responsibility. I care. It matters to me. I want to do better. However, those words aren't going to mean anything if I don't follow through with that and be intentional and aware now that I'm aware of it, and change that and help them win on the path of me winning as well. But I feel like exactly what you said, just being aware and thinking through, we all need those people in our life. And sometimes we have to do it to ourselves. Am I serving the greater good, or is this personal preference? And man, if I examine all of my decisions and activities through that lens, it probably is going to change a lot of the things I do.
So, from a micro perspective, let's call it, I would say serving the greater good is, am I ethical? Do I do what I say I'm going to do? Am I honest? Am I treating people like the golden rule or the platinum rule? I never learned about the platinum rule until just a couple of years ago. I've always learned, the golden rule, do unto others as you would want things done unto you. And the platinum rule is do unto others as they would want done. And so either way, I think that totally falls in line with like the micro perspective of greater good and taking away your or just realizing and empathizing and being conscious about what other people are looking for and not just ourselves. And David, you just did this so well from an ethical standpoint, I would call it accepting responsibility. And we're human, we're not perfect. And a lot of times we mess up, and it's accepting responsibility. And I mean, just in David and I's relationship, I feel like I'm constantly apologizing because I annoy myself for how annoying I am sometimes with just the things that get me all out of whack or whatever. And it's like constantly accepting responsibility, being like, okay, oh my gosh, like, why did I just flip out about that? Or why am I so stressed about this? And it comes out, in a very snippy way, and just, it's not okay. And accepting responsibility for me being the conduit of a challenging afternoon because my stress and my attitude got us in a wrong place. So the core of greater good could be in your home, could be in your workplace, could be in your community. And it starts with operating from solid ethics of being a good human and doing what you say and being honest and really being aware of what other people need and accepting responsibility when you mess up.
So, Nikki, as you were talking, I have a couple questions I'm dying to throw at you.
Okay.
One, so for example, you just use an example where sometimes you get off track and then you have to apologize or take ownership, or I did in my work situation. How do you show someone or make someone aware of, hey, you're really serving your personal preference here and not the greater good? Because often, like myself or you, I know your heart and I know me and my intention with work. I never intentionally was not seeking the greater good. I was just completely unaware, because I feel like a lot of people just simply are not aware. Hey, my actions, my activities, they're seeking my own agenda. They're seeking my own preference versus really taking a step back and serving the greater good of those around me. What's the best way to make someone aware of that? Any tips?
Yeah, the word that kept coming to mind as you were asking that question is leadership. And when we are led by others, so you talked about this, the leader that you reported to that you said has always been your favorite leader. And one of the things that he would say is this serving the greater good or
Mm-hmm.
David's preference. And
Mm-hmm.
that is an example. Like he was leading the way, modeling behavior, in our homes with
Mm-hmm.
children. It is dissecting situations and saying, this is why, we had said we were going to go to church and to lunch and get home by such and such time. And that's what maybe we had set out to do. And then we ended up pulling over to help someone with a flat tire and running to a store to get a part that was needed. And we didn't end up going to lunch because we were off track and had, a play in the afternoon we had to get to. And then being
Mm-hmm.
able to talk through it with the kids in the car on the way to say, here's why we made this choice. Like, this person
Mm-hmm.
really needed help and it trumped our lunch. We're going to be fine if we skip a meal. And really modeling that out. I feel like leadership and modeling is leadership. And you don't have to have the title of a leader to be a leader. But I really think it is a lot of modeling and mentoring that help people change that and really see why that's so important.
So you're saying seek out people that mentor that for you or that challenge you to do that.
Yeah, and actually, think about it like this. It's like if you are not aware and you don't even know that this is a thing, a leader has to step in and be ahead of you asking for that particular topic of help, right? So a lot of times when we're ready for a coach or a mentor or something, we say, I really need your help with conflict management. I'm just not good at that. I kind of lose my shit and I don't know how to,
Mhm.
what you're looking for. And so this is a little bit different in that it's the responsibility of those that lead this already to inspire others and be that role model. Like if you think
Mm,
of something in your life, someone in your life modeled something that still today you can think like, I learned it from them. That's where I learned that,
mhm,
and that's why I do that. I don't know, and I know, David, your
mhm.
grandfather was really a big influence in your life. I don't know if you can think of something with him because it wasn't that he said, "David, let me help you understand blah blah blah." It was he modeled
Mm,
that and you
mhm.
emulated what he modeled. Can you think of anything, whether it's great or good or not, just something that you watched him and you observed him and it built you to be that way too?
The first story that comes to mind, my grandfather, who is no longer with us, but he emulated this better than anyone I ever have known. Thank you for asking that question. And I'll share a personal story. Um, both of my grandparents are not with us anymore, but years ago they got divorced. And back in that day, divorce was much more uncommon than it is now and looked upon much differently than it is now. And people have come to realize that life is hard and things change and people move on. But anyway, so when my grandfather and his wife got divorced, she got with another guy and had moved on into another relationship. And that guy lost his job and was unemployed. And my grandfather had a leadership position in a very large company and reached out to his ex wife, my grandmother, and said, "Hey, have him call me and I'll get him a job." I mean, you talk about the loudest example I've ever personally known in my life of saying greater good versus personal preference. And I'm fortunate enough to have seen that model time after time after time in my life. And my grandfather was really great at that. And honestly, if I could live up to half of what he was, that would be a great feat. But that's just a personal example of this very loud to me and has really impacted my life in a big way.
Mm, I love that story. I know a lot more to that story with some of the depth in the background that just shows the selfless act that was modeled for you. And there's just so much good to that. And in a 2 minute tee up, you had no idea I was going to ask you about that. And you were able to share it. It impacted your life in a really big way. When we look at the micro perspective of this, if you will, like us as individuals, we talked about showing up as ethical human beings. And sometimes I think that's overlooked because somebody's like, well, I'm a good person. Yeah, I stick by, showing up as a healthy human being for society or whatever. But it's like sometimes that's how we show up to servers at restaurants that aren't exceptionally great at serving tables. And how you do anything is how you do everything. I learned that a long time ago. And even in the most complex situations, are you sticking to being kind, being honest, doing what you say? And I think all of us can sharpen our ethical thing. I think sometimes being ethical is overlooked because people are like, well, of course I'm ethical. Okay, well, ethical is really around all of the things that set us up to best serve other people and do it with humility, right? And so that's one part of it, is really being an ethical human. Number two is challenging ourselves to help others regularly. And so this is where we talked about, as a person who does this, lead others and model others. Well, if you're someone that says, I'm seeing that I need to do more of this, on the other side, you're like, I want to take the steps. What should I do? Okay, could you challenge yourself to do a random act of kindness every week? Maybe you journal about it, or maybe you have one friend or someone or your spouse that you check in with and say, here's what I did this week. And you're just building a muscle for helping other people. So, being ethical, leading and modeling to others this opportunity and way of life, and then starting to build a muscle for yourself by challenging yourself to step outside the box and do good for other people.
You bring me right to my second question I'm going to ask, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this. So, I gave the example of my grandpa who loudly was seeking the greater good. Let's look at the other side. Someone who just doesn't comprehend that mindset and is self seeking, self serving, and that's just who they are organically. Maybe they're not aware, but they constantly live their life like that in business, at work, or in their home with their spouse or their ex spouse or their children or whatever. Can someone who is not doing that and doesn't do that well, can they change? Can someone become, instead of a selfish, self seeking person, can you change into someone that is truly looking to serve the greater good? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So the question is, can someone change? And my answer is yes. I believe that people, no matter who they were in their past, can change. But I do want to give a disclaimer that when we're wired as selfish, all of us are selfish to some percentage or whatever, right? But some people are very self centered, self absorbed. And the uphill climb to get this change to happen is harder than others. If the question is, can someone change? Yes, they can change. But I would not say that this is one of those simple shifts. It's not a simple, not easy. It's not that. As you're asking this question, I'm just starting to think, what changes people when they are hardwired a certain way? And I feel like it's either rock bottom or loud inspiration, right? So we hit rock bottom and we make a change, or we have loud inspiration. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times that's a person in our life. And this is why, if you're quote unquote good at this, or you do
Mm-hmm.
really have this in your soul, being able to lead other people that way and model that for other people, to be able to serve the greater good of helping someone come to the other side, if you will. I don't know how to say that, but what changes people is when it's this kind of hard wiring. It is I am so broken that I have to learn to be someone
Mm-hmm.
else, and I'm going to go on that journey, and I'm going to go through some transformational programs. Some might be through a
Mm-hmm.
rehab program, transformational program, because it's a big shift, or you've
Mm-hmm.
been modeled the way. Someone modeled the way for you. So yes, I think there's that opportunity for sure. But so David, if we go into kind of this second tier, we've got our micro, which is us as individuals, this next level of bringing ourselves into more than just working on our internal workings and wiring, is showing up as a collaborator. And I think you had illustrated in your story, this was something that just a learning opportunity for you, and in what you're working on with your team right now. Serving the greater good is collaborating with those in your home, with those at work, with those in your church, whatever, to work towards common goals or work towards making things better together. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the first thing is just asking the right questions. You don't know what's serving the greater good. You don't know how to do what's serving the greater good unless you know what the greater good is. Ask what is important. So let's just dumb it down and bring it down to our relationship. So often, if I'm doing something that is seeking my own agenda or my own objectives or whatever it is, I don't know what is serving the greater good in our relationship unless I ask the right questions or you share it with me. And then once I know what that is, I can pivot or change or adjust my actions, my decisions to serve the greater good. So I think the first thing in collaboration with people to serve the greater good is ask the right questions, show you care, show that it matters.
I think that's so good. A couple of thoughts that I had around, let's call it family gatherings. On the weekend, we have a big family gathering and there's like 30 or 40 people. And say that we didn't do it at our house. We go to someone else's house and we're just exhausted. It's just, man, we're just trying to get through. We wanted to be there, really going to enjoy the time, but man, just tired. Now, I could sit in the living room and chit chat and just enjoy my time chit chatting while I see that there are people in the kitchen finishing prepping the food, the table needs set, waters need to be poured, drinks need to be gathered, you know, my own comfort of having a very challenging week. And I could just sit here and somebody's going to get that done. They're going to get the table set. Like, I don't need to step up and do that. That's an example of like showing up in your family in a pretty simple way, but building a muscle to say, like, what's needed here, where I could help. Or during the holidays over the years, I think both David and I have come to see, like, we don't really need much, and meaningful gifts that we give and get, we love. But with our immediate family and the kids, it's like we really would rather spend that money serving people in the community that need help. And so really helping the boys to be able to see that this is what we want to do. We want to make sure that someone who wasn't going to have a meal is going to have a meal. And we want to make sure that we understand what it is that these kids really want, because they don't have those things. And trading out our comfort of getting more gifts and having more things versus serving people in our community that need help. And thank God we have a friend that coordinates a lot of this. There's a county, maybe two counties over from us, that I think the statistics last year are 40% of the school system, those kids didn't have enough money. Their parents were living below the poverty line and didn't have enough money for Christmas. And it's like, oh my goodness, just the put our personal agenda aside and let's model this, and let's really go to serve, as a family together and collaborate with our community to make sure people have Christmas. And then finally, I was just thinking about at work and my journey with my career right now. I obviously am wired for the startup entrepreneurial world. It took me a long time to be able to say that out loud. I have really been wired like this for so long, and I've done a lot of challenging work experiences that take a lot of time and energy and peace of mind out of me. And, just right now, I know that my financial comfort has to be put to the side in order to invest in the people that I need on my team. And it just is what it is. I believe so much in our mission, and I believe in these people. And right now, that is an example of, like, I am collaborating to stretch my financials as much as I can, that sometimes have David probably ready to shake me because he's like, who made these decisions? Sometimes where it's just like, oh, I know, but we are going to make it. Everything's going to be fine. But you pour everything you have into serving this mission and serving these people. And it really is for the greater good, sometimes to a detriment. Finally, one more thought, just this mezzo standpoint, is the reason why a lot of times we do surveys. We send out a survey with, let's say that we had an event and we brought people together and we did all that we could to make this event awesome. We do a survey for feedback. We want to ask for feedback so that we can really understand, like, what was meaningful for you or what was challenging? What would you have done differently? Sometimes looking at that feedback is tough. And sometimes that feedback changes the trajectory of where we go, as much as you're like, we are having an opening keynote speaker. But then you get your survey back and people are like, man, the keynote thing at the beginning just really drops the energy. And you're like, man, really? But you go with serving the greater good to help people that are attending this event to have the greatest experience, even if you're like, by golly, we're going to do everything it takes to have that great keynote. So those are just a few examples. David, any other thoughts kind of on this collaborator space?
Yeah, that's really good. I think you nailed it. The one thing I would say is there's two sides. One, be a collaborator, asking the right questions, find out what's important. I think the other side is if you're a leader, you have an even better opportunity, and you just modeled the example of that as a leader. Something I wasn't even thinking about as we prepared for this episode is challenging leaders to empower, inspire their teams to seek the greater good. As a leader, you have such an opportunity to impact a culture of seeking the greater good when your leader is really hardcore seeking their own agendas, personal preference, and could care less about their greater good. It's real challenging for someone who follows that or reports to that to live in a culture of seeking the greater good. So as a leader, you really have the opportunity to inspire and impact that. Thank you for modeling that well for your team. I have a very close up view of that. You do that so well. So if you're a leader listening to this, my encouragement is figure out ways to inspire the people that you lead to seek the greater good, but do it yourself.
Yes, so good. Before we head off, I know we need to wrap this episode up, but I do want to make sure to touch on the one area of serving the greater good that I think most people do see and have more than the others, maybe experienced at a higher level, which is around getting involved in philanthropic efforts and serving in your community, being a volunteer, being on a board, donating. Those are kind of hardwired into kind of a norm, if you will. And I think that sometimes it's a check the box versus a meaningful impact. And that's the little tweak that I want to make right now. It's like, if you are serving, volunteering, donating, and checking the box, you know what? Kudos to you because you're serving the greater good. So I'm not going to pick on that, but I will say if there's an opportunity for you to sharpen your philanthropic efforts so that when you go to that board meeting, it's not a drag. It's a I am here to serve and I'm excited about it. And that's not every board meeting, but you have that more often than not. When you go to a volunteer experience, you're fulfilled. Like you just feel fulfilled versus like, well, I got my service hours in. So there's a huge difference there in serving the greater good when your heart and soul is aligned. And I think it takes inner work, just like when we are designing our mission in life and like our purpose statement and our core values. We need to do that for our service efforts as well in our communities and how we show up as a volunteer, a board member, or what we donate to. One of my dear friends always says, only give when you can cheerfully give. Be a cheerful giver. So do not give unless you can cheerfully give. And I think you only have that when you are so aligned to that mission. And think about how many needs are in the world, from hunger to poverty and elderly challenges and animals needs and all kinds of things. You have to figure out what is that fire for you and get involved in things so that it's not a check the box and it's truly a heartfelt thing. And you'll just watch like your ability to serve the greater good thrive. So a life of personal agenda and preference can be very lonely, and a meaningful life does include our service to others, our service to ourselves to be a great human being, and our service to those that we're in collaboration with in our homes and in our workplaces, and the service that we give to our communities in making this world a better place. And man, does that trump personal agenda. And yes, this is a hell yes.
Yes, Nikki, perfectly said. This is a hell yes. Absolutely. Let's wrap this up with 3 addicted to betterment action steps. Here we go. All right. Number 1, self awareness. Stop and give yourself an objective evaluation. Don't be afraid of the truth. Don't lie to yourself. Accept responsibility. Listen, we can't make a change unless we become aware. Number 2, seek help. Find a coach or a mentor that can help you become more aware. Don't seek out someone just to agree with you and validate your actions. No, find someone who will speak truth to you in love. Number 3, ask the right questions. Be intentional about the questions you ask. Find the most important areas in your life, whether it's the people you work closely with, whether it's your family, maybe it's your friend groups. But be intentional about questions that you ask to get a clear understanding of what it is that serves the greater good. Here's the truth: seeking the greater good is not always easy. However, it is always worth it. Imagine what the ripple effect would be if the entire addicted to betterment community became a movement of people seeking to serve the greater good of the world around us. Come on, let's do this. So, you just listened to this episode. Now, join us in being addicted to betterment. Subscribe to the show, share with your friends, tag us, and please take a moment, leave a review. Yeah, we do want your stars, but we really want the feedback.